G'day crew, we've just been talking about stress fractures, in particular stress fractures to the second metatarsal, and I thought I'd just talk about a very important potential contributor to stress fractures globally across the body, particularly important in areas like the lumbar spine, and that is we want to talk briefly about what we call the female athlete triad. Now the female athlete triad is a very important concept to understand because it essentially predisposes athletes, especially endurance athletes, to bone injury and particular stress fracture. Now the female athlete triad, as the name triad suggests, is made up of three different things. So it's essentially low energy input, so particularly with disordered eating, things like anorexia and bulimia, not getting enough kilojoules into the system to allow normal bone deposition. The second part of it is amenorrhea, so in other words, either a complete absence of a period or oligomenorrhea, which is where there is infrequent menstruation, changes estrogen levels, very important in controlling bone homeostasis. These two things contribute to the third part of the triad, which is either osteopenia or osteoporosis. Obviously bone demineralization, which creates an issue with bone strength. So that's the female athlete triad. Now one of the things that it's very critical to understand is that you don't actually have to have an eating disorder to be a part of this triad. So what we now understand increasingly is that female athletes, endurance athletes, are burning an enormous amount of energy, and they simply may not be ingesting enough calories, they may not be ingesting enough food to be able to generate the energy they require to perform at that level. So we see this particularly with elite distance runners, ultramarathoners, those sorts of people. They're just not eating enough to be able to cope with the amount of fuel they're burning. So you don't have to have an eating disorder. And that's a very important thing for you to look out for. The other very important point here is the responsibility for all of us who are involved in clinical sports medicine is to understand that there is a very small window of opportunity to build bone strength. So in other words, to deposit into your bone bank, and that window occurs in adolescence. So in females, we're talking somewhere between 11 and 14, and roughly 30% of your bone mineralization is going to occur at that time. So this is why it's so important to understand the history of menarche. So in other words, if you have a normal onset of a period, which changes your estrogen, your blood estrogen levels, so your regulation of estrogen, which helps to control deposition of bone. Very, very important to monitor this at around adolescence, and very important to encourage all of your female athletes, all of our athletes, but especially our female athletes, to be involved in activity right up to and through this period, and especially to be involved in weight-bearing activity. We want the bone to be stressed because stressed bone responds by depositing new bone. So that's really very important to encourage that side of things. So the female athlete triad, there's some suggestion that it might actually be there might be one more addition to the triad now, which is an interesting concept, but we'll talk about that another time.